Hey everyone! In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you how to make a Notion budget tracker, which includes tools to track our budget progress, bills, and expenses. In the last video, some of you mentioned that it's helpful to see what we're making first. So before we jump into the tutorial, let's start with a quick tour of the template. So this is the template we'll be making. At the top, we have a quick summary that breaks down your budget for the month. On the left here, we have a little section for the current month's highlights, which includes things like how much we've spent, what's left, and any upcoming bills. There's also a button at the top to instantly log an expense. So for example, if we're on our phones, we can just tap it to add an expense right away on the go. Next, we have a budget progress section that shows how much we've spent in each category. And underneath that, we have a section for tracking expenses. And finally, we've got a calendar section where we can keep track of our bills. In this tutorial, we'll first set up the structure and databases, and then we'll work on making an aesthetic. As always, let's start from scratch. To start, let's hover over the left-hand sidebar and click the plus button to create a new page. Then let's name the page Budget Tracker. Next, let's open the page settings by clicking the three dots in the top right corner. Then let's toggle on small text and full width to give us a bit more space to work with. Next, in the page, let's add our first section heading called Categories. You can select the text to bold it, and also open up the block settings to change the background color to make it stand out more. Then in the next line, type /database to add an inline database called Categories. And we can hide the database title like this for a neater look. Next, let's add new pages in this database for our budget categories. We can add as many or as few categories as we want here. Then let's highlight all of the pages, right-click for the icon settings and add page icons. We can also change the page icon color like this. Next, let's add a date property column. Then let's add another number property called budget. And now let's change the number format to our home currency in the property settings. Next, let's add a formula property called spent to calculate how much of the budget we've spent. And another formula property called left to calculate how much of the budget is left. And finally, a formula property called percentage to calculate the percentage of the budget we spent. Next, let's fill in the date for each category. Since this template tracks budget by month, I'm tagging the categories to the first day of the month. This way, each category is tagged to the correct month for when we do calculations later. Then let's fill in the monthly budget for each of our categories. For now, let's leave the last three formulas, as we need to set up a few more things before we can finish setting them up. And now let's work on our expense tracker. Let's duplicate a new section heading, move it to the bottom of the page, and name an expense. Then let's type /database, add in a new inline database, and name an expense. And hide the database heading for a neater look. Next, let's add a date property to track the date of our expenses. Then, let's add a number property called amount. Once that's in place, let's change the number format from a plain number to the currency we use. Next, we're going to set it up so we can link each expense to a category from the categories table. To do this, we need to add a relationship property. Then choose the categories database as the related table. Then toggle on two-way relation, and then click Add Relation. We know this worked because the categories table will now show an expense column. Next, let's add a few example entries into our expense tracker so we can see everything in action. Now let's work on our bills calendar. Just like before, let's duplicate another section heading, drag it to the bottom of the page, and rename it to Bills and Payment Calendar. Then let's add in a new inline database called Bills. This database will be mainly used for us to track recurring bills and subscriptions. Again, we can hide the database heading for a neater look. Next, add a new date property and name it due date. Then add a new number property called amount and change the number format to a local currency. Next, let's add a status property to track the status of our bills. And then go into Edit Property and delete the default in progress status since we don't need it. Now we can update the status names and adjust the colors too. Depending on how you want to track your bills, you can add as many statuses as you want. But in this tutorial, I'll keep it to paid and not paid. Finally, let's add another formula called overdue. If we want this overdue formula to stand out a bit more, we can also change the formula icon like this. Now let's add a few example bills or subscriptions that we want to track. Let's pop in the due dates. Put in the amounts. And update the statuses. Next, let's add in the formula for the overdue property. The formula essentially checks if the due date is before today and the status isn't paid, then it marks the item as overdue. This part can be a bit finicky, so feel free to pause the video here or slow the video down to follow along. Once we're done typing out the formula, let's click Done on the top right. So here we can see that there's one bill marked overdue, and if we mark this overdue item as paid, it will be no longer marked as overdue. Now let's click the plus button in the top left of the database to add a new calendar view. Then name this view Bills Calendar, and we can adjust the settings however we like. Personally, I like to turn off the page icons. Next, go to the property visibility settings and click the little eye icons to unhide the properties so they show up on the calendar cards. For example, let's unhide status and amount. So now we have a calendar that shows our bills from a glance. Now let's go back to the categories table and add the formula for the amount spent so far in the month. Feel free to pause or slow down the video to type out the formula, as it can be a bit finicky. Next, let's complete the formula for the amount left to spend for the month in each category. And finally, let's show the amount spent as a percentage of the budget. Next, in the Edit Property setting, we'll set the number format to show us a percentage and adjust the decimal point. Then in the Show As section, we can choose to display the percentage as a progress bar, and even customize colors like this. We've now got our field set up. Let's go ahead and create a new gallery view. To do that, click the plus button to add a gallery view to the database. Let's name this view Budget Progress. Then change the card preview to none and the card size to small. Now let's go to the property visibility and unhide the percentage property. And we'll get a nice gallery view that shows our budget progress by category. Now let's create a new line on the page, type /chart and add a donut chart. And search for the categories database we made earlier to link to this chart. These are the settings I'm using to configure the chart. Feel free to follow the settings I have, or adjust the settings to what you like to see. For example, we can change the chart color, the size of the chart, and what information the data labels show. Now we can move on to our budget summary. So this next section is a bit more on the intermediate side. If you're just looking for the basic budget tracker, feel free to skip ahead to the last part where we format everything and make it aesthetic. But if you want a more advanced summary section, this part's for you. First, let's duplicate the section title and call it Monthly Summary. Then let's add an inline database called Monthly Summary and hide the title for a cleaner look. In this database, we'll be only adding one page called Current Month Summary. The first property we'll add to this database is a formula property called Budget. Next, let's add a formula property called Spent. And then let's add a formula property called Left. Then add another formula property called Days Left. Next, let's scroll down to the Categories section, and in the Categories table, add a new relation property related to the monthly summary database we just made. Then let's toggle on two-way relation and click Add Relation. Now for each category in this table, let's link them to the monthly summary page like this. This part's a bit more complex, as we'll be linking databases together to create our summary view. So feel free to slow down the video or pause if you need. Then in the bills database table, we'll be doing the same thing, which is adding a relationship property to link our bills to the monthly summary database. And then for each bill entry, let's link it to the monthly summary page like this. If done correctly, our bills and categories will show up in the monthly summary database like this. Next, back in the monthly summary table, let's add a formula property called bills due next week. And then add another formula property called bills overdue. Next, let's add a text property called heading-bills. And then add another text property called heading-budget. And finally, let's add a text property called heading-expense. Now we've added in all our properties for our summary, we can work on the formulas. This budget formula is going to show us the total amount of budget available for the current month. Again, these formulas are a bit more complex, so feel free to slow the video down, or pause if you need more time to type them in. Next up is the amount formula. It's actually pretty similar to what we did with the spent formula. So a quick hack is to copy the spent formula and just tweak a few parts so it calculates the amount spent for the month instead of the budget. And finally, we're just going to do the same thing we did for the amount left formula. Again, I'm pasting in the previous formula and tweaking it a bit, so it calculates the amount spent in the month. And finally, this days left formula calculates the number of days left in the month. It's a pretty tricky one, and honestly, it took me a few tries to get it right too. Next, let's pop in the formula for bills due next week. Here, we're basically telling Notion to look at our bills database and check when the bill's due date falls in next week. Next, let's pop in the formula for bills overdue. In this one, we're telling Notion to look through our bills database and count the number of bills with the due date before today and has a status that is marked as paid. And now we have all the elements we need for our summary view. So next, let's pop in a new gallery view for this database and we'll call it Summary. In the view settings, let's set the card preview to none and then click Done. Next, let's go into the property visibility settings and then hide all those formula properties we made earlier so they show up in our gallery card. Next, we can drag the properties to arrange them so we have clear budget, bills, and expense sections in our summary. Next, let's add a shortcut button to help us add expenses when we're on the go. In a blank space, let's type /button to add a new button. Next, let's add an action to have the button create a new page in the expense tracker database. And set the date property to automatically fill in with the date the button is clicked. Next, let's add another action to open the page that was just created so we can fill in the details of our expense. Finally, let's give this button a name and we can also change the button emoji like this. Now we'll be able to quickly add an expense without having to scroll all the way to the bottom to add an entry. And now we're ready to move on to our final section and make our tracker aesthetic. Let's start by adding a page cover. We can use the default Notion images, or we can add our own cover images like this. And we can also reposition the cover photo as well, just like this. Next, let's give our page a page icon as well. Then I like to organize the page into columns. I'm going to go ahead and add a 2-column block into the page just like this. Next, in the first column, we're going to add a callout box. Using this callout box, we can group our expense button and the monthly summary inside the left column. And then we can adjust the width of the box by dragging vertical handles. Next, we're going to drag our categories graph onto the top of the second column. And then we're going to make another section that we'll call Budget Progress. And let's move the Budget Progress view into the section. Next, to decorate the page, we can add in images like this and drag the handles to resize them. And then in this section, let's add another 2-column block for an image and table layout. Next, we can adjust the column sizes for a neater look. Then I like to go into the table settings and turn off the vertical lines and page icons. Finally, I like to use conditional colors on my calendar cards to show the bill statuses more clearly. And that's it. Thanks for joining me in making this budget planner. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more tutorials. Happy budgeting, see you next time.